Good morning, Supply House. How is everybody doing today? Today we are coming here with a Butcher Block Countertop. This house is already for rent. So we have renters moving in here on Friday, and the owner called and said, hey, we have a Butcher Block Countertop. We don't think it's very sealed because we're already getting stains, and I believe we have some of that in the video. We already had major cup stains on this and it's never been used. So a brand new countertop, somebody had set something on it and you couldn't get staining out. So we actually sanded this with 180, then 320, and then 600. And I took acetone and I did a pretty heavy wipe down on this. I'm guessing it had some kind of gel stain and sealer on it that was kind of a combo, but I wanted to wipe and make sure we got that off. The problem with that is it wasn't really adequately sealing this, but it was kind of causing a few issues. So if you notice, we have some fractures over here. I have a crack in the countertop that never was dealt with. We're gonna fix that with the epoxy. We had caulking that was all just kind of coming out. They put way too big of a bead in here. That's not very helpful. I am personally somewhat concerned having an undermount sink. I see that as being problematic if they didn't seal underneath this well. So what we did was we sanded as well as we could in here, and we're gonna do our absolute best to try to bring epoxy right down to here, and then before it cures, I'll probably clean any of the kind of overage out with acetone around in here, and make sure that I have a really clean bond all the way around here, and I may even add like a small caulking bead to that, I'm not sure. I will most likely caulk in with just a clear or something in here. We are doing a copper troweled epoxy for the backsplash, so we'll be able to hide a lot of that with that. And then down here, what we have is they scabbed on this little extra piece. Obviously I see why they needed to come over to the wall, but it looks like they glued it in about half of it. They didn't cut it straight. So there we have a void here, and underneath it's just, you have a few little wall tacks holding it in. So we're gonna stiffen that up. I'm gonna fill all these gaps and fractures. We'll show you how to. Over here, all I really had was a couple like butt joints that we're showing, and again, some more staining. So we really, what we're gonna do to this is we're going to seal it, but with no extra epoxy on the surface. So a lot of times you'll see people just pour epoxy over this, and that'll look pretty. I mean, you'll have a big coat of epoxy, and if it ever gets scratched, you could polish it out. Or what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually seal this with a little bit of acetone mixed in to try to get the epoxy to penetrate into the wood. And we're gonna take a lot of time sealing it and working it in so we get it as permeated as possible. And we'll probably do that one time, then sand it, and then do it one more time for any little voids or areas that kind of overly absorb during the curing process, which is awesome because what that'll do is it'll leave us a base that we can polish, and you'll have no epoxy on top of the actual wood visible. It'll all be in the wood, and then you'll have a polished piece of wood. It'll almost look like, I don't know, like petrified wood or something. So hang around, stick around our channel here for a few days and watch us finish this. And thank you guys so much for being here. I'm gonna try to dig this out. So our goal is gonna be to just get coverage somewhat smooth, but we're not gonna overly work any area. We want it out on the wall, and we wanna have even coverage throughout an area. And I'll work kind of a little area and then pass it off like I was saying. But it's important to not leave this all in the bucket for too long, because you're losing a lot of working time while it sets in the bucket. Whereas as soon as I get it out on my wall, it'll add some, and then as soon as I flatten it on my wall, it'll even add a whole lot more because it immediately dissipates that heat. I say, this is a little fresh. You'll still see the lines in here, so. But at least you guys can look at the picture of what we're trying to do here now. And I want to run this kind of lightly. I don't want to overly compress it. If I press too hard, it's really going to just keep dragging all this product right out of my grout lines. Overwork it. And I'll just have more work to do tomorrow. We'll definitely have to sand this and do some epoxy on it tomorrow. But much less due to this layer I'm doing right now. And I love being able to do this while the epoxy is still somewhat fresh, but just a little bit firmer. So now our goal today is to be a little thinner and a little smoother. So we're gonna take our time here. We're not gonna rush this at all.
You take over?
Yeah. I'll put them all in order. Just otherwise I'll forget.
Okay.
I always overdo, like I'll always go past my corner because I hate when epoxy is dripping. Like the epoxy will be dripping right here and the masking ends right here. You know, you may as well run that masking long. So,
Okay.
And it's important to get the masking, especially what I'm doing right now, the
In the
first
corners.
layer. Like, yeah, really get it.
So it won't get behind it.
Yeah, you don't want anything behind it. Now, I already messed up and broke through my finger now because it's so thin there. Never hurts to be more. Now, I try not to have a bunch of pieces because I want to pull this as singularly as possible. This is how I kind of mask everything.
Nice tuck in the corner.
Yeah, I'll tuck it. My jokes are too dumb to acknowledge.
I went over my head, I didn't get it.
That's kind of, yeah. It's far in there. That's our only protection is whatever we do here on this layer. Usually, if I'm going heavy, I'd run this up onto this if there was a lot of epoxy, but we're gonna be doing a very thin skim coat, so we're not gonna have a ton of drips. We just want it protected. And I don't always pull this out until I need to.
Okay.
And when I do, I don't pull it out further than I need to usually. That's your corner like that.
Clever.
And now you have a little bit of a excess skirt there to go in there. Plastic, so it's not a super tight corner.
Yeah.
We're just gonna, right on our corner, we're gonna grab a little bit of this, make sure it's stuck pretty nicely.
Oh, like a flange.
Yep, yeah, just give it that little extra length. So
Take
that
it
you
out.
create a little skirt there. And then I'm always gonna give myself that tiny bit of excess on all my outside corners.
And this roll has a different pull out than the stuff used on the bottom.
Yeah, it's a little better quality. Just, no, I'm not too worried about it. It's this stuff. This should never fail. You know how this fails? Is when people accidentally torch it. They're like doing a countertop. They use their torch and they accidentally touch this.
Yeah.
Melts through immediately. We're really careful with these inside corners that are tight with like no overhang, with no drawer overhang, stuff like this. I really make sure I'm actually tucking it into the corner there. Now my final thing I'm gonna do. Now, I'm taping this as if I'm gonna come in here and pour 4 gallons of epoxy or something, you know. I'm gonna do it just, you could probably get away with slightly less masking, but I always just mask everything the same no matter what. So now, I'll just fold that down at an angle, so it's not so much taping it shut or anything. Work this in there. Now, no matter how much epoxy, you dump a bunch of epoxy, you get something stuck to this, the epoxy starts getting sticky while it cures, you accidentally touch it with your knife, you peel this tape's gonna peel right back off much easier. Now that you're sandwiching it between this layer and this layer, and your putty knife hits it or something and it's tacky, you're not gonna just peel this off. It's gonna be very difficult. So this way, probably one of the most worthwhile things to do is just this second layer of masking. It's just insurance to never have any kind of epoxy failure through your masking.
Now, do you use different masking tapes that are even stronger than this?
If I want a really good bond, I'm already kind of worried about these cabinets, so I'm really thoughtful about that because these are faux finished with the paint. So if you get too strong of a masking tape, you're gonna make a lot of faux finishes and things like that fail.
Pull off,
Yeah. So.
Do you use some stronger tape for different?
I do. I have stuff for outside. I use a lot of foil tapes and mylar tape sometimes. Just
Pretty much indoor, you just use the blue.
I use a ton of frog tape. So
Frog tape.
Frog tape is a very common thing.
What color is that?
Green. And it has filament in it, so it's waterproof.
Okay.
Okay, now, if anything's flapping around, if there's any vents underneath here, we'll shut those vents off. We'll tape everything. We'd tape it off if we had to. I really take my time tucking all the plastic to itself, making sure that it's not easily like pulled back or, you know, separated. And now you'll want to be really careful not to step on it a bunch or grind it into the floor or anything. You always want to make sure this is actually properly falling into this plastic, you know what I mean, not behind it, or because if you have a lot of epoxy flow off on a spot, you kind of need this to catch it down here. So I try to be pretty accurate and use this as my actual catch here. Pull all of this out, so I'm gonna go all the way around this. These are kind of important to do pretty, because if you do these right and then you clean this up, this will be, you'll never separate this successfully and get it remounted without damaging it, but if you do this right, you can get it very, very clean to where it looks meant to be. And I don't know if you noticed, I tried to stay just down from my metal around there, at least not up on my wood at all. I would like the epoxy to kind of bond. Okay, now I'm gonna grab that end and start bunching just the top. Let's do this. You know, if you, I don't know, you don't have a car to drive down there, man. The Colorado National Monument's a beautiful place to, they have a really nice campground up there. Probably one of the best views in the country.
That road pretty long?
What's that?
The road up there, is that pretty long or?
You can get through the whole thing in about an hour pretty
Oh, yeah.
easily, even if you stop a bit, maybe an hour and a half. It's really pretty. Have you guys, either of you done it before?
No, I was thinking about it, but.
Yeah, everybody that's ever gone up there is happy they did. They're always surprised. It's a Zion type of beauty. Like it's up there with. There you are, right there. Now, epoxy can flow all into here. Now all we need to do is mix. So do you see the stringiness of that? Both are clear components as you see, and even if they're the exact same clarity, they have different densities. One of these is significantly denser, so you have a 12 pounds per gallon and an 8 pounds per gallon there. So the different densities refract light, just like salt and fresh water. And that's one way to see that would all be sticky stuff and stringiness that would never cure. So it's kind of a nice little fail safe. I'll always want to go for my time, you know, my 3 minutes or whatever I'm doing, switch my pails, do all my same exact instructions, but leaving it clear, you'll really see if you miss something. If somebody wants to, one of y'all can just slowly mix this, just making sure those edges are clean. You're gonna feel that that drill really didn't get the edges that clean. And now you notice I switched containers, right?
Yeah.
That's so there's never gonna be you'll never get sticky A or B stuck to the side of this container.
Because it's all mixed.
Yeah, exactly. And switching containers is just the easiest way to guarantee you never have any of that. And then if you have a little sticky spot, that sucks to have to re-pour a whole countertop, and you could just switch. And this here is gonna be so much harder, it'll peel out of this container if you catch it within like 24 hours. So you're not really wasting a container anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see what this does. Hopefully it doesn't just all disappear into a hole I didn't think about. Probably pretty foolish to do this without masking, but I'll try. Like I say, I don't care if I come all the way up. I don't want to come up all the way to the top. Give myself room that if I get any air bubbles, because that's a really thick pour with countertop, I can pour a little tiny top coat tomorrow if need be. Not have any issue. Probably I don't want to if I don't have to, but I don't know how level this all is. So we'll really have to see how much this accepts here. And then I'll mix more based on how much this absorbs. I really take my time. If you notice that I don't want this pouring off. I'm okay if a little goes into that other because it won't be a big deal, you never see it, but now this is very different than doing a big thick coat of epoxy, but we're gonna get this so sealed it's gonna be way prettier than anything you've seen. Especially just with, when you have natural wood that costs a lot already, you may as well preserve it. Now, if you ever really want to get the wood to absorb even better, you don't need to, but you can lightly torch it, and it'll really open up those wood pores and even let this in even better. Try to be careful with stuff like that, but you can. See if we can color match with just a tiny bit of copper. Probably will look better sanded than just nasty or clear. Not the correct razor blades for this at all, but if it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid. That's where, asking me where I learned that saying. Semper Fi. Remember truly questioning, are we actually ever going to win a war, or is this, do we win wars with this group of guys sometimes? Are we going to kill each other accidentally? Okay. I'm going to take a little bit of this excess down to my other little fractures here, and we'll let that set in if it needs to. I'm really wanting to compress it in.
What were these?
Just these right here are just some cracks in the wood, and it's all sealed and bonded pretty well, but I don't want to leave exposed fractures, so taped off both sides, and now I'm just trying to work it in as deep as I can, and they're kind of grouting that little crack, tiny little fractures in the wood where the wood cracked from being dry. My guess is before they installed these, this wood probably wasn't as dry as it should have been, and then it started drying after they installed it. So then they called us in, and it had stained a bit. And yeah, it's sinking through a little bit now. It's so important to just keep working this in until it's cured. If you really want it nice and flat, it'll keep settling through a little bit. That one held pretty well. basically the same as you'd do a granite seam, what I'm doing over here.
Yeah.
So. Look at that, wipe off all the excess. Look at that, no crack at all, totally sealed. Can't even see it hardly. Isn't that nice? That's much better. Today, we are finishing out our sealed wood countertops. We had Butcher Block tops down here in a house that we came into, and now since we scraped all the excess epoxy off, what we're doing is we're just sanding and polishing the actual wood countertops that are totally permeated and impregnated with epoxy. So now what you'll have is more of like a piece of petrified wood per se, instead of that thick shellac of epoxy. So I'll show you, you get a really sealed but dull, really nice satin finish, and it's really damage resistant and very repairable if you do ever damage it, but it's never, even though you don't see any epoxy on the surface, it's totally sealed and it'll never stain. So I'll show you what we're talking about. So right here you can see this is the one finish end we did here. We'll clean it off. And I know this isn't really super shiny like you're used to seeing an epoxy, but really the satin is kind of the new incoming thing in my opinion. And I understand why. It's just so silky smooth to touch. Nothing ever sticks to this. If you ever did really damage it, what we're finishing it out with is right here, we're finishing it out with these 2000 grit foam back pads. You can see they're kind of squishy. So it's a real forgiving pad. If you ever did say get a big scuff here, that's so easy to take a little piece of this, give this to the customer, and they could just very easily buff out any kind of damage or anything they wanted to. I mean, look at that already. This right here is 600 grit, and I'm running this 2000 just by hand here, and you can see how much it's cleaning up this countertop. So just really forgiving here if you want to seal, especially for wood. I would always recommend this. Don't do your big ugly top coats. I know we sell epoxy here, we sell the best epoxy in the world, but learn how to seal wood a little differently than what a lot of guys are doing out there, and you'll be very happy. So thanks for joining us, and follow along. So yeah, and look how nice it just leaves that clean. Yeah, and usually I'll come over it with one, and then I'll keep going back over it, try to dust any of that off. Now look at, after sanding that epoxy, it really helped hide it just the last little bit too. Look how gorgeous that is. That's freaking gorgeous, dude. I love this. I love satin countertops too. That is just,
That looks good.
it's nice to know you can have a natural wood looking piece that's not, you know,
You can look for something.
stainable. This is made to be a single hole faucet. The only reason you'd put this plate on there is if you ever see the real flimsy top mount, it's usually like an 18 or a 20 gauge stainless steel sink, and they're real flexy. They'll put these base plates not only to cover additional holes in case you had a faucet and a faucet.
Or a soap dispenser.
Yeah, exactly. But this also makes it more stable for a flimsy top. But when you have a solid surface or something like this, you can go ahead and remove these right out. I don't know why they had this on here exactly. And now it just looks so much cleaner going directly in here. So such a cleaner look to just have one. And I always set this handle, if I can, see how it can't go all the way hot. So now I'm gonna go to the front. If this was a little more offset, I would try to get it to the side, but you can't do that where it's gonna limit how hot or cold. So we'll just go straight to the front. And usually what you'll end up doing is either underneath the sink, getting it pretty tight, and then getting up here and adjusting it and messing.
Back and forth.
Or you'll have a buddy just up here, hold it sturdy in place, centered on the hole, make sure, everything's pretty clean, that it's looking right, and then we'll all tighten up the bolts downstairs, so. See how it's leveling into place? Getting flatter and flatter. If you want any kind of movement in it that you don't lose, you could take like this at this point.
Oh, and give it like little details.
Yeah, just kind of leave it like that, and then